Well, after a floor show that was put on here during the break, we're back with part 2. Just a reminder, everyone, to head to Top Better. They've got the big 15k Golden Slipper Day tournament coming up this Saturday, so make sure you head to Top Better and join that. They're always a good way to play on a Saturday. So it looks like it's going to be wet for the week running up to Slipper Day. No surprises. We seem to have the direct opposite climates. It's done nothing but rain in Sydney. It hasn't rained here for weeks. So we've got that, and also head to One to Follow. Pods, you've been out to Sandown, had a walk around there, ready for tomorrow's meeting?
Yep, absolutely. The track's got some nice give in it. It'll race well. The big factor tomorrow will be the northerly wind, which tends to have the jockeys looking for cover once they come out of the barriers, because it's a headwind on the back straight, and I think they'll spread in the home straight. So pretty much they'll all get their chance, and it should be a good card for us to find the right opportunities.
So you can head to One to Follow and get the full sets for Potts, but just when we came in, Potts, we rang into Bobby O'Kane, who runs the All Nations here, who's our spiritual home. He got the Potts' plays yesterday and managed to get the first 4 there in race 6, which was very handy.
So I sent out 4 bets in the race, because there was 3 in the morning when I did the race. There was 3 horses marked in the 4 to 450 range, and I didn't like any of them. I had them all close to $10. So we backed 4 runners in the race. Bobby, being the very clever punter he is, decided to take those 4 runners and put them in the first 4, and I think I paid $5,500 Super Tab and $8,500 Queensland. So
too much on Super Tab, hasn't it?
Yeah. He's called himself there, Bobby.
Anyway,
the other big
unfortunately, it would have been very nice if Hollywood Girl had gone straight and won the race. But anyway,
the other big thing this week, boys, and I know I've been to some exotic locations over the weekend, and probably more to come, but there's one place I'd rather be this week, and that's the Cheltenham Festival's on this week. If anyone wants to see liquidity on Betfair, make sure you tune in during the evenings coming up for both in-running and pre-post. It's basically the Melbourne Cup Carnival of jumps racing. It's proper racing, and like they've better. Tuesday, Wednesday. I think it's either 4 or 5. Yeah. I think it's 5.
They don't have big. There's only like 6 races.
Yeah, there are 6 race cards. Yeah.
6 race cards.
So, the build, basically, this is the crescendo of the jump season. It all builds up to these days. So yeah, it's I've been to a couple of them. It beats pretty much every other carnival that I've been to outside of Swan Hill. But that's only because of the Tucker at Swan Hill is the best around. Boys, we got Rad on because we wanted to find out how the battle's been. So you've been, what's it been, about 3 months?
It'll be 3 months next Saturday to the day. Since I started my operation on a pretty small level, to be honest with you. But I was always happy to use this phase as sort of the learning phase. I've in that time sort of refined my strategy of how I'm going to go about win betting in particular. Basically, I split between win and quaddies. That's the main 2 modes I bet. The quaddies are pretty much taking care of themselves. They've been very good with the money spinner. And the win betting I've had to refine a bit, and I think I've arrived at something after about 3 months, and I'm happy with going forward. And not just learning about that. I mean, to be honest, it's a really. I mean, you've been through it. It's such a different way of operating to when you're, employed and doing it for a wage. 5-6 days a week. All that structure has to be provided by yourself. The organisation, your own time. What days you're going to have off, or off, and all of that. Learning that's been probably more important than what's happened actually on the pump so far. Because this is, I want to do this for as long as I can. So we're really talking about early days.
Yeah, it was interesting talking to Howie last week.
Yeah,
we had Howard Walder on last week. Got a great response to having Howie on. I did have to make a correction there though. I got pulled up yesterday at Moonee Valley by Ray Swanee, who mentioned that Howie actually clerked for him for the last 12 months before he went to Best Bets.
Oh, right.
So there was a small clarification there. Hello, Ray.
We missed something, did we?
So
there was plenty of information.
And he's probably in a similar sort of boat, isn't he? Right, where you just sort of, especially this early phase, you're just finding your way.
Yeah.
But that's the biggest adjustment, isn't it? Is the discipline to actually structure your life.
Yeah.
And then how, because it's a hell of a lot of work. People think that it's just feet up on the desk. It's definitely not. Like talk to Potter yourself or DK or any of the, like I know a heap of blokes that do it full time, and they work more hours than I do, which is hard.
And I'm working in hours terms a lot more than I was in the corporate bookmaking world. You know, it looks all great.
It's very easy to do because I would think the biggest difference is in your how many years in corporate land?
About 17. Yeah.
17. Every month there was a payment in your account.
Well, that's right.
This way, if you don't make it happen, it's not there.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, there've been days when you've had a shocking day the day before or a couple of days before, and you just feel like staying in bed, and you think, well, I'm not going to get that back. Lying in bed, so you've just got to get on with it.
And I think the tools to cope with that. I mean, it's one of the only professions you can do where you can work really hard and actually go backwards.
Absolutely,
that can happen, and you can do a lot right and still go backwards for periods.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and especially in an environment where you spend a lot of time on your own too. I can see how people go mad very easily. You ever run a photo finishes, you think God's against you or something like that. I've been fine with the actual discipline mechanics of putting money on. I'm not betting bigger or smaller or anything like that than I had planned to, even during an ordinary day. So I'm happy with that. But on the other hand, as my wife would tell you, I have overreacted to a couple of stuff. And
you do that.
Logically, look, if you get done in a photo, swearing at the TV is not going to help. They're not going to pay you because you're sworn at the TV. But try telling yourself that in the hood. It's. I think it'd be better off for everyone if I can sort of learn to control that.
But also, I think having a bit of a little venting is actually part of it. I think you've got to do it, but you've got to get it out of your system really quickly.
Oh yeah,
and then just move on.
If you're stewing on your stuff.
Yeah, it's just the quicker you can move on from it, the better. So,
and I've had to learn how to do that. I think a little bit of anything's okay. Completely carrying on and losing plots, not, and also just getting into depression because it's not going your ways. Not going to help you.
Absolutely.
So, again, boys, the talking point coming out of Flemington on Saturday was the track. There was a bias there, but as I tweeted out on Saturday night, Potts, I took the picture of your comments from the set and tweeted them out. It wasn't entirely unpredictable what happened.
No, absolutely. I mean, the track probably dried out a little bit more than I thought. The advantage to be on the inside was probably a length more than I anticipated, but one of the problems is the jockeys don't adjust to it very well. You know what I mean? Like when the track's racing like that, it's racing quick and there is an advantage to be on pace. You can't give up your positions at all. You know what I mean? And
and they get obsessed with getting the trail they wanted with the original map. And they end up way too far back.
And being relaxed. You know what I mean? Like when the tracks are running quick like that, you've almost got to ride them like they do in America.
Which
is particularly
put them in the race.
Particularly if you're on the best horses or the strongest horses in the race, you need that to happen. Because on a track like that, you can be the best horse in the race, sit at the back and run a really fast last 600, and get back 2 lengths. Doesn't matter. What difference does it make? But the example of how that track should be ridden was in the Australian Cup. There was pressure on throughout.
There was,
and the field just all the horses found their natural levels of talent.
And
right 2 horses fought it out. The United States wasn't quite fit enough, and his fitness gave away late. They all sort of.
Huey rode Jamaica a bit out of its pattern.
Absolutely.
For the way the track was playing, and almost got the money.
A superb ride, a superb run. She's a great mare, and that run will do her no end of good. She will be, so like it's, even though she's ridden a bit out of a pattern and it's a bit forced and it's not.
I'd like to see that happen more often.
That's exactly. But if they rode like that all day, we wouldn't even be having a big conversation about.
Well, there'd be more tempo on early, and keep it all. How far back was that?
It would have been 5 or 6 lengths off the lead for most of the race.
So I mean, apparently you couldn't do that.
Well, something we mentioned before we started, and I don't know whether you were here yet, Potts, was how slowly some of those jockeys led in those early races. It just made it impossible in some cases. It was a combination of both, the times and the track to run on. Well,
we can start with race 1. Top Me Up has a number of times come into a race exactly like that at Flemington, where he's faced different circumstances where the fence has not been as much of a help and there's been wind. Wind to make it more of a test for on-pace runners. And it's brought him undone every time. I've backed him on both those runs, and I didn't Saturday. So there you go.
That was
because
there
you go. Of course, he was given the opportunity to reserve some energy. He was able to run home with some help with the track. The jockeys on the stronger horses didn't fully test him. And there's the difference, and it was the same with Circone. If Aspect pours more pressure on from the 800, Aspect wins the race for sure, and Circone probably finishes third or fourth. And even with in the race with I'm a Star, this is really tricky, and I don't want this to sound like I'm just describing the circumstances. Luke Curry's riding really well, he's doing a great job, right? But he's on Aspect, who's that was the Circone race. So no criticism of Luke Curry. But now we're going to Eli Kazim, so it's Steve Parton, right? Eli Kazim's coming up with a 1400 metre run in a strong 1400 metre race. He's got a favourite behind him who's coming up from an 1100 metre race, and the way to beat that favourite is to stretch it right out. So if Eli Kazim doesn't worry about all the normal things of getting a rest and trying to have a bludge and just run home, and actually goes from the 600 and doesn't worry about the leader, just ignores the leader and says, what I'm doing here is I'm stretching the favourite out, I think Eli Kazim would have won the race and Kanedna probably would have finished second. Is my opinion, right? Now, maybe I'm wrong about that. I think that would have... But because I'm a Star was able to conserve energy, a lot of energy in the middle of that race, she was able to use her sprint to be in the finish. So,
and there wasn't much in it at the end, so that was
absolutely
critical.
And all this stuff I'm saying, it's very much splitting hairs, you know what I mean? So I'm saying the jockeys have just got to make minor adjustments to the way they normally ride under those type of circumstances.
This is a gut feel thing, I've got no data to back this up. Just from watching races lately, I suspect it's more of a Melbourne thing than a Sydney thing, this obsession of getting, the beautiful trail all the time, getting that drop the anchor mid-race, all that sort of stuff. Guys like Abdullah and Sydney are far happy to just stick to it and go for it,
Well, is it almost, and for a lack of a better term, the Dwayne Dunn syndrome, where we've got to try and ride them a little bit pretty and slow them up and then or get the right run and do it like that rather than, as you say, the gun would just go, right, bang, we've got to be here and we're going to put them in and we're going to test them right out.
Yeah, I mean, you'd sometimes think they'd rather get beat looking cute on them than win looking ugly,
They'd rather run third, but it was beautiful run, than run third, but I gave it every possible, tested them all out, and these two were the two in the race that were better than me.
I've got two other comments to make about something on today's jumping. First of all, in the straight races. 7 days before, we saw one horse try the
irrigation.
One race they tried the middle of the track, and sort of Justice was beaten in a photo. I've spent 2 hours out there on Thursday, and I am as confident as I can in my own opinion here that the irrigation lane on Saturday, the dead centre of the track, was 2 to 3 lengths faster than the outside fence. And Sweet Cherry went to the outside fence in the first with other horses, and Sweet Cherry wasn't beaten far. I think if Sweet Cherry had come to the middle of the track, she would have probably won the race, in my opinion. And then we would have had horses using that lane in the Newmarket and the last race of the day. Unfortunately, once the jockeys, and particularly one of the seniors, decides to avoid a certain area, the rest of them just follow. And I'm not sure exactly what the reason was on Saturday, but in my opinion they missed an opportunity there, because they would have been far better off being in the middle of the track in those lanes than they were outside the inside 4 lanes over on the inside, you know what I mean? So
how wide is that fast lane in the middle?
So it starts at about, because it slightly varies because they don't run the track over the exact same spot every time. They slide it a bit either way. Let's just say it's from the 11 metre mark to about the 18 metre mark. So it's about 6 or 7 metres wide. Absolutely.
Yeah, but what's just looking quickly forward, I know Mick said on the radio this morning he's going to 3 metres for this Saturday's meeting. Is that far enough to bring them into play this week?
Well, they have to get out 8 off that position to get to it. You probably need, in circle races, you'd probably need wind to... so if there's wind, particularly from the southwest, which is the prevailing wind usually, then often you get either that or the northeasterly.
So it comes
usually get one or the other.
Yeah.
The southwesterly tends to impact on the leaders the most, particularly on the circle part of the track and as they're straighting. So then you get the field bunching, like a peloton, and then they fan more. So you'd probably need that southwesterly wind to bring that into play. But the straight races this Saturday, I would think they'll probably end up coming down the middle of the track, and everyone will be saying, how come they're winning down the middle this week? You know what I mean? Anyway, and the other thing I wanted to say was, for those that didn't hear it, Mick went on the radio this morning. He handled himself beautifully. He explained all the circumstances in a very clear and understandable fashion that explains the whole situation, so everyone should at least understand it. Now, we're talking about differences of a length or two over 1,400 and 1,600 metres. That's how subtle it is. And if the wind had blown from the southwest on Sunday, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. He would have moved it all around in another fashion.
And it was also similar to what Mick explained to us when he's been on our show a couple of times, Pods. He's gone through how difficult it is.
And the only thing that wasn't clear in Mick's explanation this morning, I just want to add to what Mick was saying, is we have the 4 race meetings in the first week of November over 7 days, 600 horses that choose the track up, and he's only got until the 5 weeks to renovate the track and get it back. So he's had to use sods to replace certain parts of the track, and you can only do that with Kaiku. That's the part that we didn't say this morning.
Okay, so
you can't go and buy grass sods. Right? So that's, and unless he's given more time to renovate the track, that's going to be an ongoing problem.
Just had to rail that constantly until that's the only other thing.
And then the other thing there is then you wear.
Oh yeah, then
when it comes back, you've got this fresh patch.
Exactly. Yeah.
The most important thing that Mick said this morning was, I don't know why Fleming has highlighted this, nearly every track's got some nuance or another, and the circumstances change all the time, and it's not just, it's to do with the surface, the conditions on the day, the wind, the weather, there's so many factors that go into it.
Just the shape, the track.
And people ask to talk about it, the shape, all that. All we're doing is we're trying to find any little edge we can.
Yeah.
And we're talking about half a length here, a length there, and it all matters so much when these horses, as they cross the line, there's usually only somewhere between 5 and 10 lengths between them from first to last, and we're trying to find that little bit of advantage.
Yeah.
Now, Matt Stewart again, he sort of used Pakenham as half an example of what an example of an even track should be, and I don't think there's a more nice track in the state than Pakenham. It can be lane racing. Like I've been to plenty of meetings at Pakenham, and sometimes it's down the outside fence, or you've got to be hard up against it.
It's been good the last 2 Thursdays. Really good.
Yeah, so can we just say the track team at Pakenham are doing a very good job.
Unreal.
They're doing an outstanding job, but it's going to have a certain pattern to it.
Because of the sprinklers.
Because of the sprinklers are part of it, the camber is a
another
huge
part of it,
and the Kaiku is a huge part of it. So they've all got their own peculiarities, and it's an outdoor sport. Weather plays a big part of it. You know, people just don't accept that it's not an indoor stadium where they're running athletics in lanes. So that's
and the other thing that Mick mentioned is the country blokes are doing it. They're doing a magnificent job with the resources they have at hand. And like I've seen some of these tracks. Like we had a couple of DK half blew up about it on Twitter on Saturday. They do have the world's oldest set of barriers out there at Edenhope. And I was standing next to Mitch Freeman, and he said, there's a spare set of gates at Hamilton, why don't they just go and drag them up here? And it's little things like that for a club that only runs, they have the Edenhope Cup and the Aspley Cup. They're the only 2 meetings of the year, but it's little things like that, and they've got a beautiful natural track there.
Got a nice track actually.
And Dunkell's the same, it's just a volunteer committee, and they don't have the resources there, but it's a tab meeting, so therefore if there's still that level of wagering on it, it can then bring that sort of criticism, which is completely unfair. So I think that's just something that we've got to get our heads around. So
my final comment on Flemington is just, I just want to give a pat on the back to Jay Fry, who come to town on a horse that he felt comfortable with, and he just owned the race. So that's the way he always rides in the bush, and well done to Jay Fry there. You any other observations?
No, look, I started off betting on the meeting, and I gave it away after the Newmarket. And the track was certainly part of it, but it was as much the way, like we touched on before, the jockeys were riding to that pattern, and it was just becoming hard to read to me. So I decided to do the damage, which is good because I was going to have a bit of a crack at Jamaica in the Australian Cup, so I saved some heartache there. Yeah.
Boys, we'll have a look at it in a bit of detail at the 2 feature races. We had a Twitter question come in from Nathan Greenaway on Twitter. How did the the United States parade, Pots?
Okay, well, the information I had from on course was that he was very close, close, maybe just half a run short.
As they say,
And then when you watch the race, given that it was such a test, that's what, look, he ran up to win, to really be in the finish, and he just peaked on it in the last 100. So I would think he'll be, right at his peak, which I assume would be the BMW, I assume.
So it was won by Humidor. He was 460 across the totes, but the VOP and the corporates, it was sort of 420.
I mean, like, the whole the racing rumour thing went into overdrive race more.
Yeah, and the conspiracists were...
which had me, I was just sitting there watching for any signals coming from Betfair, and they never come really. Like every time it sort of got pushed a bit, someone just cleaned it up, and so it was all much to do about nothing in the end. And you know, hats off to Darren Weir and his team. That horse has been targeted at that race. He's improved every run. He's a difficult horse to handle because he's a hot, highly strung horse. So it's a training fix, and Frosty rode it perfectly. So you know, it's just, they did everything right to knock Jamaica off by half a length. It just shows what a good mare she is. So.
Was there much else to take out of the race apart from the performance of Jamaica? And as you say, the United States probably got a bit more to come at Humidor.
Yeah, well, I'm going to assume if any of those horses are going to run again this campaign, Jupp, it'll be in Sydney.
Yeah,
I would say, wouldn't it?
Unless they go to the Bull.
Or maybe Benny Hills, I don't know. Who knows? But Mornington Cup, maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure. It's possible. There's other possibilities.
Some of those lesser ones might drop down to that level to try and qualify for the Caulfield Cup.
On tracks up to a 7 in Sydney, that will be really strong form, I think.
Yeah.
You know?
And
I think.
Boys, the Newmarket was taken out by apparently the best horse in the stable that he knew about but didn't tell anyone before it.
Maybe he did tell people, that's not us.
Well, he didn't tell it.
The upsetting part for me is that, like, I spotted this horse in a first up last campaign from Hong Kong in a weak race at Moonee Valley, and just thought, and I wrote out to my subscribers, you know, he's probably not fully tuned up, this horse, but this is going to be our only chance to ever back a horse like this in a race this week at this price range. And I think we took $9. It might have been double figures, I can't remember, and we got knocked off by Sir Bacchus, like, honestly. And in a few months, not even that long ago, now it's winning a Newmarket.
There you go.
Like,
and by 3.
Just trotting.
They did go very slow.
Slow early, very slow early. The first
shades of the Lightning.
Yeah.
But I mean, you wouldn't think the Lightning and Newmarket would be so slowly run.
So that first of all, that's a great point you've raised. That race shape in the Lightning did not help any of those horses. It brought them all undone. Yeah. You're actually better off being fresh into this race than having run in that race. Yeah. So there was something about that Lightning that just didn't serve as a platform for this 1200 metre race. Because I expected Illustrious Lad to be the spot where Red Creek Warrior was, but he couldn't get him going.
Yeah.
The horse didn't want to go at all, which I think is probably something to do with the Lightning. I'm not quite sure what, but and then even the ones that come through the Oakley Plate, they didn't seem to have any spring early. Like they were sort of being forced to, and there's Red Curd Warrior just doing it under his own steam. It's all very odd. But
I think, well, if you're on the favourite, and well, quite a few others in the race, you were feeling pretty sick early. I didn't back speak. I backed Voodoo Lad amongst a couple of others. And, he ran really well, but he just did. I mean, he wasn't going to win from that way.
Yeah, it's just to me, it's just a very strange race. I look at it; it's a very low rating for a Newmarket. Nearly all those horses are rated off their peaks. Like, it just seems strange.
That shows you. Something funny's going on.
So I'm not prepared to sort of virtually overlook it as a form reference, but and obviously the winner's a very good horse, and in my mind, he's a miler. I never thought of him as a 1200 metre horse. So anyway,
there's been a long history of milers winning straight sixes at Flemington. But
usually when they go like flat out and they sort of
that's right. Not sitting up on the lure, just like accelerating away.
If you didn't know anything about those, or you just watched it. What you thought he was 6-4 chance?
Oh, that's how he won.
I'm all on speed here. I was cantering away from him, and
mind you take 6-4. Anything out of Bales is riding out.
Well, after and then followed it up with his 20th birthday yesterday. He's outridden his claim, and Anis Marubilis there just winning the Adelaide Cup.
Thank you very much.
Wish Frosty could have got the third or so, but.
I meant to ask before we talk about your stuff, Mark. I just forgot to ask. What states are you betting in? And what sort of differences are you finding?
Okay, I'm in partnership with another guy. I concentrate in own form exclusively on New South Wales, and he does Victoria.
Right.
And then we share that. Our markets and information, we bet off that. We have confidence in each other. We're just happy to go with what the other says in their respective state. And we've been, like I said, we take a lot of quaddies. We get some form from.
How complex is your quaddie taking? Do you take
don't ask me to explain them.
Yeah,
So
it's very complex.
Yeah.
But
because I've thought about quaddies a lot. I thought if I'm going to do it, I have to have a system that really stakes it very carefully, and
you need someone who was really good at proper mathematics, not you know. And the reason they're a good bet type is for that very reason. There is a lot of flexi money in those pools, and if you can stake them correctly, there is an issue. But you know, working that out.
You do have to have it,
and for that reason, we get hold of the WA form a few times a week. The WA quaddie pools are just way much bigger than they should be compared to the other types. Like the Sunday evening quaddie in WA, 180, 200,000 in the pools. Like I'm, you know, trying to get something at Warwick Farm on a Wednesday, and the early quaddie combined pools wouldn't be 50.
No.
You know, it'd be 20 odd each. Super Tab New South. And then, you know, Geraldton on a Sunday, the 180, 200. So we sort of want to
that also almost brings us back to like the Good Friday thing. You have to put, if you're putting the product on when people are there to bet, that's what tends to happen.
Even those Thursdays, because of the time slot in WA, you can get 80,000.
Yeah.
You know, Bunbury, wherever, quaddie on Thursday.
And as you mentioned when you were on last time, Brad, the last those sweet spot races in Ascot after the last.
Over in the East,
the last 4 main interstate ones, they can be huge holding races. Like you'd hold more on them than what you would in the first couple in Melbourne.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, it's, you know, it's 6, 7, 8 in the evening, and drinks kick in, I suppose, for a lot of the punters.
And they're either on the Chevy or.
And so with the with win betting, so in Melbourne you've got the VAP, and in Sydney they're taking the flux on course, aren't they?
They are, yes.
Is there much of a difference there?
Tell you what, I don't bet top fluck very often, but when I have, I would suggest it's a bad idea in Victoria these days. If you,
I've noticed it's much harder.
It's flattened out quite a bit. Sydney, and to be honest, in Sydney, they're not going to. The track bookies aren't going to chase Betfair right out either. But I think it's more pronounced in the VAPs now.
The VAP now with the top fluck, if you get around the 105, 106, where we were consistently getting down around the 100 mark a lot of the time.
The truth is, Juppy, the official fluck only was lasting 25 minutes. And in reality, it's starting at 9 a.m. And the market's swinging wildly prior to that 25-minute point.
But even up to the 25-minute mark, if you haven't taken the price you want to take yet, I've done it probably out of laziness a couple of times going, I've got other things to do, I want to be on this at around this price, but almost every case you'd be better off sitting there and doing the work and shopping for that top price you can get.
It's and the other thing is I don't think that Sydney ring's as competitive as what it was. I think those blokes are finding it much harder, and they've just said, well, there's no we're not going forward doing what we were doing, so we've reined it in. And I think it's a little bit less competitive than what it used to be.
And especially there's a couple of citizens of the corporate world who will just chase Betfair to the tenth of us,
and arb if need be. Just to get it into the book if they don't like it. Boys, if anyone hasn't out there, make sure you head to Facebook and like One to Follow. That means you'll get all the articles that come through, that the shows come up on there. You've got the podcast that you've been doing with Maddie on a Friday, Pots. And especially with the footy codes kicking in now, there'll be a heap of content to do with that. So make sure you head to Facebook and like that. Right, thanks for coming back, mate. Appreciate it.
Anytime. No.
Thank you, Bods.
Thank you, Mark.
Cheers.
Thank you for completely taking over.
Well, I didn't completely take over. I made one attempt. It was one attempt at coup.
It was a bloodless coup.
We'll go to the judges' scorecards after.
No, we haven't missed any viewer questions this week. Like we had a few last week. I think we never got to. We forgot about them.
My Twitter feed's so full, it's like a state school.
Anyway.
If you do have any questions, you can fire them into me. I'm at the Picnics on Twitter, or send them into One to Follow and they'll get to us. And if you've got any questions, just fire them in. We're happy to answer them. So until next week, punters, we'll speak to you then. Good luck.